Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Week 10 Rotoworld Football Show Waiver Wire Chat. I am Patrick Daugherty, joined by our waivers guru, Kyle Dvorchak, and he's got his new waiver wired article live on our site, and there's just a lot of really good players in this week, Kyle. I had the same thought you did when I was looking at the players under 50% rostered on Yahoo this morning. Like, man, hope you guys don't need any running backs, receivers, tight ends, or quarterbacks this week because it is very bleak. It's a bad week even for streaming defenses. It's a little bit better week for wide receivers, Kyle. A lot better than running back. I mean, running back, it's all retread guys. Like, I hope you want Jalen Warren. Wide receiver, we probably would have said Jerry Jeudy. The Browns are on bye this week.
And he's not good.
And that too. But so of the players who are under 50% rostered on Yahoo and are playing this week, who are you calling the waiver wire ad of the week for week 10?
It's Ricky Pearsall. I think he would have clearly been over 50% rostered in Yahoo leagues had he played last week, but he got his bye, so people weren't as interested in picking him up. But without Brandon Ayuk for the remainder of the year, he looks like a pretty good bet to be running 60, 70, 80% of the routes going forward. He's a first-round rookie who's already flashing big play potential, and he plays on one of the most efficient offenses in the NFL. I think there are a bevy of first-round rookie or second-year players that you can be adding this week, but give me the one that plays on a Shanahan team.
That makes a lot of sense to me. And yeah, Pearsall, it's almost like it's a young player coming out of the bye. That'll be great. Shanahan might be like, hey, guess what, brother? It's actually a perfect time for a rug pull.
Also, it's weird because a lot of these, like, he's coming out of buys, like he's had 5 to 6 weeks to percolate, and now they're going to finally fully install him. He's played 2 games, so it's a very different situation. So I think it's fair to not make that argument for him specifically.
So just hopefully no Ricky Pearsall rug pull, but I agree. I mean, just the right offense, the right surroundings, the right quarterback, the right team. Not the highest upside waiver wire ad you're going to make this year, but still first round pedigree coming available in week 9 and 10. And a guy too who wasn't like banished to the bench. He was hurt. That's kind of rare. So there's a lot of upside there with Mr. Ricky Pearsall. We begin with a question from Desh. He has offered a trade, Breece Hall for Jonathan Taylor, 2 clear-cut RB1s, Kyle. But both guys were, I could see a Breece manager be like, I'm tired of Breece. I could see a Jonathan Taylor manager be like, I'm tired of Jonathan Taylor. Why was Trey Sermon playing over him last night? Why would Shane Steichen not say why Trey Sermon was playing over him last night in the fourth quarter? Kind of a weird situation there. But just 2 guys who are going to be in the top 12 more weeks than not. Who do you prefer rest of season between Breece Hall and Jonathan Taylor?
Yeah, give me Breece Hall. Both of these players are really talented, but I do think if I'm starting my franchise today, I'm probably picking Breece Hall even just as a runner, and his upside as a pass catcher is far more voluptuous. So I think it's Breece, and it's not runaway, but I was pretty quick to get to my answer.
It's not runaway, but it seems weird to say about the Jets, but the Jets are by far the better overall offensive environment than the Colts. The receptions firewall, as you laid out, is just so nice with Breece. And 2, let's just be real. I mean, every player in the NFL is 1 hit away from an injury, but Jonathan Taylor cannot stop getting hurt. Breece Hall hasn't really missed any time since coming back from his torn ACL, major injury. But just I think 2 or 3 reasons why I would probably have Breece Hall 2 or 3 spots ahead of Jonathan Taylor in my rest of season rankings. Weekly viewer Lynn Dorfins, happy Monday. 5 RB roster max. We start to, oh dear, how would you rank these guys to go behind Kyren Williams, Kenneth Walker, and Najee? Rank going forward, some bench fodder here. Jordan Mason, Jonathan Brooks, Blake Corum, and maybe take as an opportunity to talk about Jonathan Brooks, who's finally coming back from the Panthers this week in Germany. And then, of course, they're going on bye. I rank Jordan Mason, who could be out of value, John Brooks, who we've yet to see play, Blake Corum, who we have barely seen play.
Yeah, I think it'd be clearly Jonathan Brooks for me. He's the only one who has any chance of unseating the starter through play of his own. Like, Blake Corum is like functionally a healthy scratch every week. I think he played 1 snap last week. Every once in a while he pops up for 3 carries, but it really hasn't happened much this year. And Jordan Mason just obviously isn't unseating Christian McCaffrey. Mason's pretty good, but it's Christian freaking McCaffrey. Like, come on. Whereas Jonathan Brooks, the plan for him over the long run is obviously to unseat Chuba Hubbard as the starter. It's just whether it happens in week 10, probably not. Week 11's the bye, apparently. Week 12, well, maybe post-rookie bye. This one's also very different than your average post-rookie bye. 13, 14, though, you could really start to see him coming on. The other 2 are purely contingent plays.
Corum is a distant third. Corum is to the point Or even if Kyron Williams got hurt, I kind of wonder if like Corum would even have like 60.
I came to this thought as well. It's like if he was going to jump in and see all this work sans Kyron, you don't think they would want to test him out once during the regular season? Like guys who do not get to play football don't suddenly get to play 100% of football very often. So I do kind of think that that's a concern at this point.
And say you have one spot and it comes down to Jordan Mason and Jonathan Brooks. I'm choosing Brooks over Mason for two reasons. So with Mason, Christian McCaffrey could easily get hurt again, but Mason himself is hurt, as we know, as has aggravated his shoulder now twice. He gave Isaac Garundo an opening, and Garundo's kind of done something with it. He's looked pretty impressive, all things considered. So he's another guy where even if CMC gets injured again, I'm not sure we're going to see the early season Jordan Mason, almost like league-leading type rushing usage we saw from Jordan Mason. I think he'd be a lot more of a committee. And Jonathan Brooks, it just comes down to, like, what is even the point of the second half of the Panthers season? It's to evaluate these young players. Jonathan Brooks is probably – Chuba Hubbard has been good, but I don't know why – they would not end up if they don't feature Jonathan Brooks over Chuba Hubbard, it's probably gonna be like a 50-50 split. So yeah, Jonathan Brooks, the clear guy there, Mr. Lindorphins. Chad, weekly viewer, what are the odds Keenan Allen gets traded? Was he in your trade article, Kyle?
No,
the Bears probably not packing up. I don't think Keenan will get traded. Basically, let's tell Chad what we're expecting, what we're seeing from the Bears receiver core right now, which has been very dispiriting since Keenan got healthy, since they started running the ball more effectively, and now, of course, the past 2 weeks since they've been horrid on the road. Bears 0-4 on the road, 4-0 at home. What's our spiel right now in this Bears receiver core? We do not think Keenan will get traded.
Yeah, some weird stuff going on with DJ Moore. Notably, if you've been on Twitter, you see the play where, like, he does look hurt. Like, he takes a little limp off the side of the field, but it is mid-play, and he just slightly gimpy walks off the field and is not playing. There's also another clip where he like gives Caleb Williams a little shoulder check as he's walking off, like just doesn't get out of his way. Like the vibes are not great on this team. And Rome Odunze's role has been growing, especially in terms of the high volume deep threat. I think he got to 100 yards last week as well. So the Odunze role is growing. DJ Moore's anger is growing, and the offense is not growing. They've kind of stagnated and maybe even taking a step back at this point. Frankly, that's a reason to not trade Keenan Allen. Obviously, he isn't maybe offering exactly what they thought they were buying. I don't think they thought they were buying a 230-pound receiver either, to be fair. But I don't think they're selling out, giving up on the season, or giving up on the hopes of the offense. I do think the Steelers are very live to make a move for a wide receiver, but all of the reports have had them linked to Mike Williams and Adam Thielen, and those two make a lot of sense.
Yeah, two main reasons the Bears won't be trading Keenan Allen is, one, they want to evaluate Caleb. They're 4-4. They don't want to throw in the towel in the season. Yep. The other thing, Matt Eberflus, Ryan Poles are on the hot seat. Like they're not going into rebuild mode. They're not rebuilding for the next guy. So Keenan Allen is definitely going to still be there with the Bears. And it is a strange situation going on there with Chicago. But I had a final thought on that. I don't remember what it was. Keenan not creating any fantasy value of his own, just sapping it from our poor DJ.
Yeah.
Bandit picked up Jalen Warren and Ricky Pearsall during their Week 9 buys. Who has a better chance to be relevant down the stretch, Kyle, and why is it Ricky Pearsall?
I was going to say Ricky Pearsall, too. It's disappointing because I drafted a lot of Jalen Warren. It's fine. I drafted a lot of Ricky Pearsall, too. I'm going to be all right. I think the clear path to a high-value role is so much more present for Ricky Pearsall, where they lose Brandon Ayuk's role, and Deebo Samuel, what he does in the offense, has very little overlap with how Brandon Ayuk plays, and they need someone to, replicate as much of that job as they can. Whereas Jalen Warren, I think, is kind of stagnating in terms of volume at a usable 10 to 12 touches, but he needs the Najee Harris injury, and he also needs to play better. He has not been efficient this year, whereas we still have the upside for Ricky Pearsall to be an efficient, not high volume, but mid-volume player. Jalen Warren still has work to do to achieve those things.
A real big week for Jalen Warren, whose usage was finally ticking up before the Steelers by 12 carries, 9 carries, 14 touches, 11 touches, getting a little more into Jalen Warren territory there. That coinciding with the Steelers offense in general, just looking a little bit better under Russell Wilson. And now, after the bye week, nursing the 2 injuries all year, he's got to be as healthy as he's been all year. If Jalen Warren suddenly gets back to 13, 14 touches this weekend, we might finally start to actually get to see the Jalen Warren we expected all along. But I just think it's going to be a very, very telling week for Jalen Warren. And he needs, at the bare minimum, needs to get 10 touches this weekend against the Commanders. And if it's even like 9 or 10, I'm going to view that as disappointing. And if we don't see the Jalen Warren we expected preseason this weekend, I don't think we're really going to see him this year. So we shall see. Will, as backup running backs questions, he has Josh Jacobs and Mr. Kenneth Walker III on bye. Ray Davis or Trey Benson for a 1 week stream, Kyle. And why is it Ray Davis? It might not be. Who is it?
Can you look up who these teams play next week? Oh, a bunch of the Bills receivers are hurt, which seems like a pretty reasonable way for them to work back into their run heavy approach they spent half the season almost going with. And Ray Davis has played really well. He leads all running backs in yards per route run of all stats. A minimum of 30 routes. It's a bit gimmicky based on the
63-yard catch and run might have helped.
He had another long one, like a 30 or 40 yarder in like the first few weeks of the season. But like, hey, guess who breaks off long plays at a higher rate than bad players? Good players. So it's tough though. And Trey Benson has almost been in the Blake Corum zone of like, yeah, he got a few carries and blowouts, but otherwise he's been mostly unused. Last week, that slightly changed, though only won by 20 last week, and he was not on the field with Clayton Tune, who I believe got a final 3 handoffs to Amari DiMarcado as well. So it wasn't pure garbage time, but it was 4 or 5 carries late in the game, and he got 9 total touches. He had a long catch early in the game. I think it's Ray Davis. I think Trey Benson has a real chance to go 2 carries this coming week. Ray Davis is probably quote locked in for 5 to 6 touches.
I think he is, and I don't want this to be damning with faint praise, but it's a pretty good week for a desperation stream of Ray Davis, actually, where he had the long play against the Dolphins. He had a goal line carry that he did not convert. James Cook had 2 goal line carries, so it wasn't like Ray Davis like banishing James Cook from the goal line, but pretty decent usage. You mentioned the receiver injuries, really banged. They've been so much more pass heavy the past 3 weeks, the Bills, but they're really banged up in the receiver core. And what it really comes down to is they're playing the Indianapolis Colts, who just do not have a good run defense. And just a lot of the stars are basically aligning for the Bills to lean on the run game for the first time in a month. So I think it's a good week to stream Mr. Ray Davis. Chad wondering if he's crazy, by the way, for being concerned about Scary Terry. I would say yes. It was low usage game. The Scary Terry thing is the Commanders have shown us that, listen, if they don't have to pass 30 times, they're not going to pass 30 times. So I guess that's kind of concerning, but I feel like Terry McLaurin has really lived up to his 2024 DJ Moore prophecy, has he not, Kyle? Like, we're basically, this is the Terry McLaurin we've always dreamed of.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it, both on how the team wants to operate and what we've seen from Terry McLaurin. He's absolutely dominating, especially the air yards. He's very sort of like George Pickens, Calvin Ridley-esque in that way, where I don't think he's the best receiver in the NFL, but he earns a ton of downfield targets. And if you just earn 1 or 2 of those a game, you're a really frustrating player. If you earn 100+ air yards a game, you don't even need to convert on that many of your air yards. And when you have an incredible deep ball thrower, as Terry McLaurin does, it makes it much easier. Whereas the reason George Pickens can be so frustrating is the better option for him is Russell Wilson, which is a really bad spot to be in. So albeit 3 targets, that is underwhelming. I think in most instances when they aren't kind of just able to rest on their laurels, like Chris Rodriguez got 11 carries, I believe, all in the second half, not a single first half carry. And I love they went into halftime up by maybe 2 possessions, and they were like, that's it. We've already beat the Giants. And they were right. So
Kyle, you and I get paid to foresee possibilities. And another one we definitely did not foresee was the Commanders being like too good to sometimes get their fantasy numbers.
Yeah.
But Terry McLaurin has always been volatile. I think the difference this year, he's volatile on the wide receiver 1-2 borderline instead of the 2-3. Exactly. He was always camped out in like that 20 to 26 range. Now he's more camped out in like the 10 to 18 range. That might sound like too wide of a range to you. That's kind of how this stuff works. PBD, by the way, wondering, where would you rank Will Reichard rest of season amongst kickers, and why is he last? Hey, Will, unlike some of these kickers, he actually stayed out there and kicked. So he was.
I had Will Reichard in a fantasy league in one of my co-managed FFPC teams, and we were all sweating Reichard and Jefferson to get like 20 some points, and I was like, all right. Well, no Jefferson on that drive, but here comes a Will Reichard 3-point something. Oh, God. And then, okay, Jefferson's getting back going. He sets Will Reichard up for another 3-point bango. No, Will, no. We ended up winning, luckily, but God, that was tilting.
Man, I was in shambles that the Chargers were not feeding Cameron Dicker, by the way. yesterday. Eric Fichter is wondering, what RBs are we trading Kittle or St. Brown for? He's got a 14-team PPR league. He really needs a running back. 14-team league kind of complicates this calculus, but when I say you're trading George Kittle for a running back, Kyle, what's a name that comes to mind? Is his positional value enough where you can turn that into an RB1? Could you get, or maybe a guy on the borderline like James Cook, Devin Achane, DeAndre Swift, or do you need to think bigger than that if you're trading George Kittle?
Oh, Achane's like a top 5 running back. You're not getting Achane. I was kind of thinking in the same range, though. I was thinking like Kenneth Walker was a name that came to mind for me. These guys who just aren't quite in the top 8 mix, which means you can be ranked RB9 and it's fine, or you could be ranked RB15. I'm like, sure, whatever. That's all the same tier of players. I do think you need to go for that tier and preferably the top. James Cook, another good example of, he doesn't get all the touches. They take some goal line work to give to Josh Allen, but in general, he is his team's clear lead back, and he's good. So, yeah, I think that's a good example. Kenneth Walker was the other one I came up with.
Could you tier up with ARSB there, or is it kind of fishing in the same range as you would be?
Oh, no, St. Brown, I need like Achane or Bijan or whatever. See, he's awesome. Yeah.
Really, I don't know if you could get that though for receiver, especially since he's not doing the 9 to 10 target thing. He's doing more like the 7 to 8 target thing. He's scoring a lot, St. Brown, but we're not getting quite like the PPR demon that we had got. We're getting a high end wide receiver 1, but he is more in like the 6 to 7 range. I feel like this year.
Okay.
Whereas last year,
no, you're probably right about that.
So I will see. But yeah, Eric, yeah, you got to at least, you're not going to get like Saquon, but yeah, start in like the 6 to 7 range and maybe try not to venture beyond the 12 to 13 range. When it comes to running backs, they're starting Anthony. Now, who would you rather have rest of season as a flex, Cedric Tillman or Brian Robinson Jr.? Seems like an easy question in theory, but B-Rob has been really banged up lately, Kyle. So answer that question for Anthony. And then we will get some waiver wire questions this week. Then a horrible week for the waiver wire. Cris Rodriguez got some early down work for the Commandos on Sunday. Rest of season, Ced Tillman versus B-Rob, and then thoughts on C-Rod.
Yeah, I think it has to be Tillman because of the Brian Robinson injury. Tillman also playing really well. He did not play well as a rookie, but he seems to have really flourished. One, it's easy to flourish when Jameis Winston just drops back 50 times and is chucking it. But he is succeeding. He's succeeding in that role where guys like Elijah Moore and Jerry Jeudy are hit or miss, but Judy's been capped at 70-something yards. He's earning some targets, but he's not the team's number 1 target earner. Tillman is truly flourishing, and he was an interesting prospect. You had like one really good peak season at Tennessee, but he was a late declare, some good, some bad. If you squint, though, you can really see how he breaks out and sustains wide receiver 2 numbers going forward. I think Brian Robinson is very similar in that he wasn't going to be an RB1 because there's too much Austin Eckler in the offense. Jaden Daniels can score rushing touchdowns, but could he be the RB15? Yeah, I think he could easily be that. It's just the injury right now, so just bank the points and the high volume role with Tillman.
It's a little hard for me to say, take the receiver who's been good for 2 weeks over the running back. It's so hard to find those running back touches. But B-Rob just seems like, yeah, this wasn't the role they even wanted for him because they did want Eckler involved. And he was kind of dispatching Eckler like ever so briefly for a week or two. Then the injuries kind of set in. Even when he's played, now it's been more of like a 1A, 1B thing again. I think I agree with you, even though it feels maybe not fundamentally sound. Like we're 3 straight weeks, actually. I said 2 for Tillman, 2 with Jameis, but 3 straight weeks of really high target totals and pretty high conversion rate on those targets for Cedric Tillman, where he might be like the rarest of rare things where it's like a wide receiver 2 you get off the waiver wire. So I think I lean Mr. Cedric Tillman there. And yeah, B-Rob, oh man, that guy needs a week or 2 to get healthy. I guess he already had a week or 2 to get healthy, though.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it was what hamstring right now, but then it was knee earlier in the year. So I do think it makes sense for them to limit his touches coming back. And I guess we can answer the Cris Rodriguez thing. He's a practice squad call up, and they weren't using him in the first half at all. I think literally every one of his touches came in the second half when they were like immediately going.
The Commanders, one of the best teams in the league. So
they are very good. They do get a lot of opportunities to salt away their bad opponents because most of their opponents are inferior. But he's part of like a 3-way committee until Brian Robinson returns, which could be next week, could be the week after that. But it is a pretty short-lived, not based on talent, based on a very speculative roll bet. I do think he's just like a $1 or $2 fab. You can churn these guys on the back of your roster. Like, Like I have Khalil Herbert on some ones where he doesn't play football anymore, but what if they traded him? Like, what if this weird scenario?
What are you going to do if he doesn't get traded on Tuesday?
He's only cost me $1. I'm gonna get rid of him. Audric Estime, they said he was going to get more work. No. He got some garbage time touches.
Heard that one before.
Yeah. I know exactly. Yeah, but like he's a $1 churn. Like I've heard that one before. It truly applies to a lot of these guys. Like, oh, this random running back popped up for 11 touches. I'm sure that won't disappear immediately. We have heard that one before. So I think he's just a $1 bid.
Kidding aside, I really like Audric Estime as an ad this week when it's so barren. He's like the one guy who might be getting a bigger workload without anything happening in front of him at this point. Because Javonte just the Javonte like dead cat bounce is over. Like he's back to just being.
It's just like that one game where he scored 2 touchdowns.
It was like 2 or 3 weeks where he had like reasonably good box scores. It just seems like that moment is coming past for Mr. Javonte. Cris wondering who is better to keep rest of season, Mr. Malik Neighbors, who is no longer Daniel Jones proof, or Tyreek Hill, who might not be Tua Tagovailoa proof. Kyle, 2 guys kind of hanging out in like that 8 to 10 to 12 range of the wide receiver ranks. Who would you rather have for the second half of the year, Neighbors or Tyreek?
I think it's got to be Tyreek Hill. I mean, obviously the 2 games that he's had coming back, or since Tua came back, were 70-something yards, and I think 80 on the dot. Underwhelming performances from what we expect from Tyreek Hill. We have a pretty large sample of data saying he is one of the 2 to 3 best receivers in the NFL. I'm going to bank on that strong history of he's Tyreek Hill versus Malik Neighbors, who's very good. But now we have like half of his games this year in which he's just all right and half in which he's a superstar. I'm 100% sure Tyreek Hill is a superstar with a better quarterback. I'm pretty sure Neighbors is a superstar, but maybe he's just a regular star. And his quarterback is genuinely awful.
And if you're looking for tiebreakers, the Dolphins have already had their bye.
Good one.
The Giants have not already had their bye. I guess another
at this point, that does actually matter because that's like a bye is 1/8 of the rest of the season. Actually, it's like even a little more than that.
There's 5 weeks left of the fantasy regular season.
Yeah.
So yeah, we are in crunch time. The other tiebreaker could be Tua's health. Tua. I'm not even kidding, by the way. So Tua had this 4th down scramble yesterday. I don't know if you've seen it yet.
I haven't.
We're kind of everyone's like, oh no, like why is he doing this? And this is not a joke. The Bills defenders, I think, pulled up. They didn't want to hit him. He was going down, but it was like a clear situation where like they would have hit like a normal quarterback. I almost wonder like if he'll have that in his favor. Like no one wants to be like the guy that like ends to his career, but it's not really quantifiable though. Like, don't worry, they're not going to hit.
Well, hold on, no, I actually do have a spreadsheet that has something similar to that. It's a model. It's a model.
Yeah, they don't want to hit Tua. Elisha here. Question has Justin Jefferson, Nico Collins, Cooper Kupp, Devontae Smith. What's this question here, Kyle?
Phenomenal running backs for running back death. Yeah,
I think they want to trade a running back for a receiver. Oh, no. Wants to trade a wide receiver for running back. Try to make sense of this question and answer it for me, Kyle. I'm sorry. I'm a little confused.
So let's say a hypothetical. We have Justin Jefferson, Nico Collins, Cooper Kupp, and Devon Smith acquired via trade. Doesn't really seem relevant to the topic. Doesn't matter. And I want to trade one of them for running back depth. I assume you can only start maybe, let's call it 3 wide receivers. You're kind of getting past buys. You don't need the 4th one. You know, you always think you don't need the 4th one. And then literally every wide receiver is hurt this year. So maybe just hold on to that wide receiver depth is what I would say. Interesting. Running backs, Gibbs and Montgomery, which is a fun little combo there. Am I just gonna like keep saying Ken Walker or how did Joe Mixon do? Can we buy low on him? It
was 100 yards.
They played on he scored, but they played a terrible game.
They did. Football. Okay, I understand the question now for Elisha. I actually would just stand pat because you got
that's kind of how I felt too.
Too many injury question marks there. Gibbs and Montgomery. I can see why you don't want 2 players in the same team. That actually is annoying. In like a home league, like that's pretty annoying. Like it's not like some large
it's
field.
Unnecessary.
Yeah, but I would not be forcing a move here.
If you want to make a move, I'll say trade Cooper Kupp because they both came back 2 weeks ago. It looked like Puka was clearly the number 1 receiver. Last week, not as true, even just looking at the snaps Puka played because Puka got ejected right before the end of the first half. But I think there's a lot of volatility in how and what his role actually is. If it's a high volume role, it's probably still a lot of shallow ADOT, PPR scam, but not explosive week kind of stuff. And he has tons of name brand value. So I do think if you make me trade one, it's Cooper Kupp. And I am gunning for probably in that same range of like what I was hoping to get for Kittle, maybe even a little more than that. The Kenneth Walker, James Cook, Josh Jacobs is maybe another example of these types of players.
Yeah, especially since we don't want Elisha to force a trade. I would not aim any lower than that.
Yes.
So you better actually maybe a situation where you need to win the trade. So one of the secrets of trading is occasionally you need to be willing to lose a trade. But this is a situation where you need to be trying to win that trade. Mr. Thakar, wondering if we start Terry McLaurin or Devin Achane at flex, and why is it Devin Achane? This is what wax poetic on Devin Achane there for a minute, Kyle.
Yeah, it's easily Devin Achane, which is not a slight against Terry McLaurin. He's played really good football this year. His quarterback's good, so on and so forth. But not only is Achane really awesome and efficient when Tua is on the field and when the offense is operating in a way that they want to, but the way they're playing right now is benefiting the running backs in terms of efficiency and is also giving Achane a number 2 receiver role on this team. And at points, it looks like he's the number 1 receiver. It's everything. He is the rare training camp. We're going to give this guy some snaps at slot. Everyone's like, shut up. Please don't make me write this blurb. Please don't make me write this blurb. And they're doing the thing. And it's working quite well for his fantasy production. For their offense, it's fine. It's whatever. But this is really everything you could hope for from the Achane role in terms of why we were drafting him at the 2-3 turn. And then he'll go up a few picks and be like, screw it. He's Devon Achane. Take him at 14 and got punished severely for doing that. I am reaping the rewards right now, and I think we're going to continue to do so.
Another quick question, Mr. Thakar. Just kind of an ongoing conundrum for a lot of people. Packers on bye this week, but when they come back off a bye, who would you rather start between Christian Watson and Dontavian Wicks, a.k.a. kind of the two guys who have fallen behind Jaden Reed and Romeo Doubs?
Yeah, it's Christian Watson. He's been running more routes, and Dontavian Wicks isn't that good, honestly. Like
he's a dropper. He's a dropper. It's a shame. He's not very good. It is very unfortunate, but he's no good.
Everyone was really excited about like a 150 route sample or whatever he got last year.
Dude, catch a ball, man. You ever thought of that? Like, just catch the ball.
Ever. Please, my guy, catch a ball. That is not going to endear you to the coaching staff. When you're already playing a part-time role, I will absolutely take Christian Watson, even though also like not a special player. I think we're sort of past the point where he can be this true difference maker. And he's more of a change of pace wide receiver, essentially. But Dontavian Wicks just isn't on the field enough and is making too many mistakes when he's on the field.
Watson has a few alibis. So Watson has not made like any of those matchup flipping plays that he kind of became famous for. And I think it's probably largely because how just out of sync this Packers passing attack has been because of the Jordan Love injuries. Like
they can't get like 2 consecutive normal games of football.
Exactly what I was gonna say. We just cannot get like Jordan Love settled in at all. The Packers offensive approach is kind of all over the map. So maybe coming off this bye, if Jordan Love can actually be healthy and stay healthy, then we'll finally see some spiked weeks from Christian Watson. But I also just wonder with Christian Watson, like he was an older prospect, right? And a guy who's already had a bunch of lower body injuries. He's just already had some of his explosiveness sapped. And it's just possible. You might think it's crazy, but like sometimes 2 hamstring injuries, like, dude, like when you're at like the top of the top, like if you lose like 2% of your explosiveness, like that could be it.
Especially for a player whose game is based somewhat solely on explosiveness. Like he's not the crispiest route runner. He's mostly based on being truly physically gifted, even amongst the most physically gifted at their profession.
Chad asking something is probably on everyone's mind. On more people's mind if the Cowboys had any fantasy relevant players, but how concerned are we about the Cowboys offensive environment with Dak Prescott maybe going on IR? It sounds like missing like at least 2 games. Can Cooper Rush say CeeDee Lamb plays? Of course, he's week to week. I bet he plays though. How concerned are we about CeeDee Lamb and the down ballot guys like Jake Ferguson and Jalen Tolbert? Can Cooper Rush, who's not like an abominable backup, but he's still a backup. He's not a great backup. He's a backup. What do we think about Cooper Rush in this Cowboys offensive environment?
Yeah, it's not going to be good. I do think it's survivable for CeeDee Lamb. I still think he'll exist on the wide receiver 1-2 border in kind of a downside scenario. When you're on your backup quarterback, if I'm a coach, I'm telling in this case, Cooper Rush or whoever it is, you know, the guy who's way better than literally everyone else on the team and better than most players at wide receiver, only look at him. It's fine. Just do that. And especially when the other guys are Jake Ferguson, who's fine, whatever. But Tolbert has been so dreadfully inefficient this year. There is just no point in involving him in the game plan. When you've checked CeeDee, you've checked the check down, you check Jake Ferguson, and then you check CeeDee one more time. That's when you look at Jake Tolbert and Jalen Tolbert in your read progression. But he just is not involved. and then a decrease in quarterback efficiency I mean, maybe you hold on to him now because we got to at least wait to see if CD's active for week 10, but otherwise he is completely droppable.
Yeah, I had high hopes for Jalen Tolbert because they needed the third weapon so bad, and they wanted it to be him so bad. Like you said, he has not been efficient, has not taken the bull by the horns there. Angel Angel, full PPR league, 6-point bonus for that 100-yard. We love Kyle and I know all about the 100-yard bonus. We know far too well about the 100-yard bonus. Wondering if they should start J.K. Dobbins, Tyrone Tracy, or Rachaad White in week 10. Do we need it to be about the matchups, or is Tyrone Tracy kind of far enough ahead of these guys at this point where you say it's this Tyrone Tracy and forget about it? But what are we telling Angel?
Yeah, I think you've kind of put it succinctly. It's Tyrone Tracy is the most talented of the group. And for your 100 yards, he's also easily the most explosive of the group. So if you want to break towards trying to get that 100-yard bonus, you can do that as well. He's just completely dusted Devin Singletary. I get his offense isn't good, but he's been able to overcome the confines of a bad offense so far. We also see the Chargers moving away from their run-first approach. We see the Bucs moving away from using one single running back at all. I think it is kind of Tyrone Tracy and forget about it. You could maybe pitch me on Dobbins because he is going to get a lot of work like Tracy, but like Tracy's a lot better right now.
The only caveat I guess I would add is that if you want the floor, just do J.K. Dobbins because even with the more pass-heavy approach, he's still getting 18 to 20 carries. We don't really know the Week 10 slate yet, but one thing I just saw, the Chargers are almost 8-point home favorites against the Titans. So it's definitely a nice floor week.
That's a good spot if I'm being honest.
It's a good spot, but Tyrone Tracy against the Panthers is also
that's the best spot. Yeah. It's like literally, I think, the best spot in terms of fantasy points against. There you go.
I mean, he's flying to Germany, which is always interesting. But Michelle, weekly viewer, wondering about Keaton Mitchell's value rest of season. He's available on the waiver wire. She has Charbonnet and Jonathan Brooks coming off IR. Is Keaton Mitchell going to happen? Or is Justice Hill is kind of too fully settled into what would have been Keaton Mitchell's role, Kyle?
Yeah, I think Keaton Mitchell could eat into part of that role, but I think a lot of what they like about Justice Hill is just his dependability. Like he can play the 2-minute drill, like he can be a pass blocker, and obviously he's a good pass catcher out of the backfield, whereas Mitchell is more of that explosive back, he can catch passes really well, but I don't think that's his role in the offense specifically. It's designing screens for him as opposed to being a third down, chip an edge, and then leak out in the flat or run a wheel route, that kind of stuff. And when you're cutting the pie that small where he's not going to play 2-minute drill, but maybe he'll get some passing down works when it's like a first or second down design pass to him. And of course, he's not getting early down work because that's Derrick Henry. Of course, he's not getting goal line work because that's Derrick Henry to Lamar. Yeah. You've really cut the pie so small that I do think he's an awesome player, but I do think it's really hard to see how he's getting more than 5 touches a game. Like his just per game average is probably at 5 or 6. And that's kind of been a good outcome for him. If you really wanted to swap him for Charbonnet specifically, Charbonnet also is doing nothing right now anyways. So if you just want to take the flyer on maybe this guy could be more of that 8-touch-a-game guy, go ahead and swap Keaton Mitchell for him. I would not obviously swap Jonathan Brooks for him.
I think I would keep even Charbonnet over Keaton Mitchell for kind of the main reason being Charbonnet. Listen, you want to talk about a guy who's not good. Charbonnet is not good. But
he's a plotter.
He's a 1-for-1 replacement for Kenneth Walker. Or if the big dog got hurt in Baltimore, like Keaton Mitchell's still in like some weird backfield committee mess. And Charbonnet's contingency value is enough for me to hold on to Charbonnet over Keaton Mitchell, even though I'd be happy to get Zach Charbonnet off my team. But you're just not in a good enough situation to do that. I talk as I look for the question. Joseph Garcia wondering about kickers, by the way. Austin Seibert, Chris Boswell, Blake Grupe. Joseph, just take the guy in the best offense. Seibert has been printing money, actually.
Who the hell does Austin Seibert play for? I do not know.
The Mr. Commanders, Austin Seibert. So the answer, Joe, is Austin Seibert. I say both this weekend, rest of the season. Blake Grupe has actually a lot of fantasy points. I know this guy because I do the rankings every week. And to do the kickers, I always reset them by average fantasy points, and it's always insane. Like, dude, like Nick Folk, cannot get out of the top 10.
But, it's the number 4 kicker is like the most mediocre team's kicker because they get it to the 40 and then they can't get past it. But it's hard to know what that actually is until you see the averages.
The worst kickers are always on the middle of the road teams, like Jake Elliott, man. They always go for 2. Like McPherson and Elliott are always stuck in the middle where you want a kicker either an elite offense or a bad offense. Seibert, the Commanders, it's difficult to believe, but are elite. Steve $ scared is wondering if he should trade Brian Thomas for Brock Purdy. He is Goff, and he puts in parentheses trash. And he already has Chase, Nico coming back, Shakir and Lockett. To be honest, it's not super amazing wide receiver depth.
Hell no, we won't go. Not on your life are we trading Brian Thomas.
Yeah, and I don't think Purdy's quite enough of an upgrade over Jared Goff either. I think my advice, Kyle, would be to not make the trade and just stay active on the wire. Basically, if you're not loving Goff, just wait for opportunities on the wire. Anything to add to that?
No, I think you put it well. Is how much of an upgrade is Purdy even over Goff? They're both sort of very similar archetypes in that they rely on the efficiency and output of their offense to have relatively low volume but high touchdown spikes. Purdy's a little bit better for fantasy at doing that thing. It's also a little more mobile, but these are small edges you're grinding. I got to get, I don't know, what quarterback do you need for Brian Thomas? Is it Jalen Hurts? Who's the QB4? Because he's probably
the big four this year has been Lamar, Hurts, Josh Allen, and Jaden Daniels.
Oh, Daniels, who is? Yeah. You honestly, I have to crack into the big four because Brian Thomas is real. We didn't get to see much of it last week. He's a little banged up. Don't care. He's really freaking good at football. And this is a spot where your wide receiver 3 spot isn't even locked up.
Would you rather have Brian Thomas or Joe Burrow?
Oh, Thomas, easily.
Burrow's been settled in as the QB5. He's the one pocket passer who's actually posting pretty big fantasy numbers, although he had not been until this week.
Yeah, I think that means you have to crack the big four for Brian Thomas for me, because you're probably, you're absolutely right that Joe Burrow is the QB5. It's not doing it for me.
Ben, this is not a question, it's just a comment. Oh, wrong Ben one. Sorry. Dennis Allen is gone. Woohoo. From Ben. The other one was talking about a player being explosive. I'm not sure who. GHE21. Who is better rest of season in a PPR league, Cooper Kupp or Garrett Wilson? I was going to say, and why is it Garrett Wilson? But it's actually, this one's a little murky. Who do you like better rest of season between Coop and Garrett?
I think you were right to say it's Garrett. Obviously, it's not one of, a lot of your why is it is a very clear, you're about to tell me the correct answer. And I don't think this is a why is it X player answer. But Garrett Wilson has kind of started to, he's really ascending essentially as they get Davante Adams, which I think is probably proof that they needed someone to actually counterbalance him the whole time. And also the offense is playing better with Davante Adams there. Whether or not Adams is the one actually going out and producing, it has really helped the entire offense, Aaron Rodgers' numbers, Garrett Wilson's numbers, to have a second viable pass catcher there, despite Allen Lazard's crazy touchdown numbers. So I think it's Garrett Wilson. But Cooper Kupp's also really good at football. I'd be fine if you wanted that one.
Yeah, but I think especially the injury thing too. And sometimes it's too easy to correlate these things, but I think it's pretty easy to say that ever since Davante Adams has come there, all of a sudden there's a lot more room for Garrett Wilson to operate. And even though he's not getting the 10 to 12 targets anymore, the targets he has been getting are just much more valuable. Garrett Wilson, a guy who has not been hurt in a while. Offense kind of on the upswing. I do prefer Garrett Wilson to Cooper Kupp as well. Jay Grizz needs a QB this week. Currently roster Stafford. Basically needs to stream someone. Stafford, Herbert, Rodgers, Tua, and Cousins on waivers. Listen, Stafford's been cracking the top 12. Herbert is kind of pushing top 15. Cousins is definitely the guy with the most fantasy points there, though. Who do you prefer for Jay Grizz to start at quarterback this week?
Probably Justin Herbert. I don't know. Like you said, Stafford's really been cooking, and I said it on the Thursday show, but whenever he has, and last week will go down as this, will qualify as this stat as well. Whenever he has both Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua, he's averaging 19 fantasy points a game. He's averaging 2 touchdowns a game. He only played with them for half a game last week, but it will count for my fun little splits that I'll use in articles at some point. So I guess maybe the answer is Stafford. I think I might have talked myself into it.
It's Stafford because I just looked to 50.5 game total. He's playing the Dolphins.
50.5. That's fine.
Yeah, you basically have to play Stafford, who I think he only has 9 touchdowns, but 6 of them have come in the past 2 games since Puka and Kupp got healthy. It's not going to last. We know that when it comes to the Rams' health, but just take it while you can get it, basically.
On Stafford's blurb from not this past week, but the week before that, he threw, I think, like 3 or 4 touchdowns in that game. And someone wrote the headline, Stafford doubles touchdown total in week 8. And I was like, oh, someone made a dumb typo. That's not right. And I was like, oh my God, that's right.
Yeah, no, there's been a lot of crazy stuff going on with Stafford. Jay Grizz, by the way, giving us the kicker dope. Jake Moody coming back soon. So
that's a good one. Yeah,
it actually is. I'm tired of ranking
his offense is good, but his head coach is a coward who will kick field goals when he shouldn't.
That's true. We love it. And Jay Grizz says thank you for the quarterback advice. Yeah, a lot of guys to choose from there. Quarterback has become a pile up, man, like a real pile up in like the QB 8 to 15 range. Where there's just a lot of guys where, like, depending on like the way you look at the spreadsheet, you're like, no, I'm going to put Tua there. Like, you know what? I'm going to put Stafford there. Last week was hard. And I just took my initial look right before this chat for this week, and it was very hard. Stuntman Chuck, 85. Which 2 running backs did you start half PPR out of Demont, Chase Brown, Tyrone Tracy? That is a tough one. Zach Moss, Kyle, you and I were going over injuries right before the show. He's out indefinitely with the neck. Really kind of got the platonic ideal of what you would want out of a Chase Brown solo backfield game. We love Demont and his touchdowns in that elite offense. We love what we've seen from Tyrone Tracy. I think kind of Demont is the odd man out there, but do you agree with that for Chuck?
I could field the argument for Demont over Tyrone Tracy. Chase Brown got like 27 carries, went for well over 100 yards, scored last week. It's 1 week, but he's easily an RB1. And I'm trying not to jump the shark by saying, like, is he top 6? Is he top 7? And like, I kind of think he is. I think we should have a little fun with it and just throw him in there and see what happens. So Chase Brown easily clears these other 2 guys. Yeah, go Tracy. I mean, frankly, you should probably just bank the touches and bank the explosive plays. I could really go either way on that one, though.
It's a tough one because the Giants' offense is so dysfunctional. We kind of saw like the dark side, quote unquote, of Tyrone Tracy. Like, this Giants' offense could kind of just like submarine itself any given week, but very hard
in this week though.
It's very hard to see come back against the Panthers. Yeah. Yep. So I just think as much, I don't know. I guess it's a classic. Like, listen, if you're like the favorite in your matchup, maybe just put Demont in there, knowing you're going to get the points or whatever. But I mean, you're going to get the points with the other, and you're going to get ceiling with the other 2 guys. So I think Demont is the odd man out there. Chad wondering, has Bo Nix surpassed Caleb Williams in keeper dynasty leagues? And why is the answer no, Kyle?
That's a why is the answer pitch to me, if I've ever heard one. Yeah, I mean, Bo Nix has played fine. Like, he's had his ups, he's had his downs, but our priors should still be strongly that Caleb Williams is better. And Bo Nix has not played particularly well. It's been fine. I think it's roughly hit expectations. I think it's come in starts and fits. I would say it's met expectations, but so much of his production is just on the ground. And especially in a dynasty league, when I'm thinking, who can I be starting in 2027, 2028, 2029? I still don't know if Bo Nix has looked like a clear franchise quarterback. My opinion of him hasn't changed a ton, other than that I'm a little more confident that he's going to rush. I was kind of always confident he's going to rush, but now I definitely see that as a big part of his game. But like, is he better than Daniel Jones, essentially? I don't know.
Yeah,
probably, but maybe not. Daniel Jones threw like 24 touchdowns as a rookie. I had to look that up like 19 times. He had like 2 4-touchdown games and another multi-touchdown game, and he was a good runner. And that is scarily close to what we could see from Bo Nix. I don't want to jump the shark on him versus Caleb Williams. I do think where we can obviously make that move. Like, I see people still saying, oh, well, you should still take Caleb over Jaden, for example, something like that. No, like, we have enough of a sample of Jaden being a superstar that not only is he the QB1 in this, if we're redrafting this class, but he's like a top 3 dynasty quarterback, probably.
I mean, Greg Rosenthal tweeted yesterday, I think correctly, like, Jaden Daniels is like already one of the best players in the league somehow.
Yeah.
Pretty insane.
Is he the dynasty QB1? I don't know, we're derailing, but like
maybe Josh Allen still, to be honest.
Yeah, I think that'd be fine. Yeah.
You thinking like 3-year horizons basically with quarterbacks. Mm-hmm. I'd probably still say Josh Allen, although maybe he could get in the Cam Newton zone where he takes a few too many hits. By the way, did you see the totally insane Daniel Jones finally threw a touchdown at home yesterday?
Yeah.
And since his last touchdown at home, the Chiefs have won 2 Super Bowls. Tough to do. Oh, real tough to do. So by the way, we have a viewer. No, wrong question. Sorry. We have a viewer pointing out that Danny Dimes rest of season schedule looking pretty easy.
I should have known that Tracy played the Panthers.
I respond, who cares? Because the schedule's easy for Daniel Jones. Guess who Daniel Jones is easy for? His schedule.
Yeah, I will say Daniel Jones has done okay against bad defenses this year. He's played 6 defenses that are bottom half of the league in EPA per dropback. He scored multiple touchdowns against 4 of the 6. He's only 2 though. Multiple means 2 specifically. It does not mean more than 2, except for a rushing touchdown that he added one time. But he has been fantasy viable, fantasy top 15, specifically against bad defenses. And obviously he gets the worst defense, or if you want to nitpick, the second or third worst this week. This is a good streaming week for him, but it's that he plays like the 31st or 32nd defense in the NFL. You very rightly point out that, what turns a bad defense around better than anything is a bad quarterback.
Basic Daniel Jones, maybe even in Munich, Germany. Michelle needs a quarterback this week. She's thinking about dropping Nick Chubb, who is on bye in a PPR league. I understand the thought. I don't think you can probably do it, but just give us kind of the State of the Union address on Nick Chubb and his first 2 games back in this Browns offense.
Yeah, isn't it 3 now? I think he's had 3 games at this point.
2 either way. Yeah, what have we seen so far from Mr. Nick Chubb?
Yeah, it just hasn't been, not only has he not been sort of the model breaker, he's a guy who, there are very few players who every single year are the most efficient running back. Like, we're going to see this with Devon Achane because he struggled so much for 5 or 6 weeks, whatever it was. We're going to look back and his year won't be that efficient, but so few players can defy the confines of bad offenses year in and year out. Nick Chubb was one of those guys. It's like Nick Chubb and Derrick Henry, really it for like a 5-year stretch. He hasn't looked like that, and he hasn't looked like an average running back. He's looked like a far below average running back based on the efficiency numbers. And now his team has transitioned to this full pass heavy and oftentimes bad offense, just bad in a different way than it used to be. There's a lot of headwind coming against him where I do think the volume has been there and the talent was there as recently as 14 months ago or whatever. But I don't think you can start him right now. And I also feel like you can't drop him. So it's a very weird spot to be in.
Yeah, I don't think you can drop him, Michelle. You just kind of have to. He's a guy. So it is 3 games, by the way. He's back in the NFL swing of things now. Maybe the bye, he can kind of rest and heal up. Yeah. It is a tough offensive environment. And Jameis is a guy who's actually throwing in the red zone, not waiting for his running back to cash it in. He's either throwing the touchdown or throwing the pick.
And he's not throwing to his running backs either, even without the red zone fact. He just throws deep to his receivers on every play.
I think we've probably seen the worst for Nick Chubb, though. I'm probably seen the worst for this Browns offense. They play the Saints when they come off by. Very good matchup. Mr. Okada has a question now, too, by the way. He's had a few comments. Garundo or Jordan Mason? Who do we think is going to be the primary insurance back for Mr. CMC? Is it still Jordan Mason? Or is the rookie, maybe Isaac Garundo, kind of walked through the door that Jordan Mason's shoulder injuries opened?
Yeah, I still think it's Jordan Mason, especially because he will get time for this shoulder injury to heal, assuming Christian McCaffrey is playing this week, which obviously seems relatively safe to assume. So I think the next time he is potentially needed, maybe he's not needed through the end of the year, but he'll have had a few weeks to heal. I do agree with your sort of premise that I don't think he gets 90% of the snaps or 80% of the snaps. I don't think he's out carrying his backups 20-2 anymore because of the injuries and because Garundo played really well in his, pseudo spot start. So I still think it's Mason. I will feel less confident in his role should it ever be called upon again.
A few more questions here. Well, this is a comment from JM. Rest of season, should he continue to make bad fantasy football decisions or find a new hobby? Never surrender, JM.
I was going to say, why would you give up now? If you need to give up in the offseason, go for it. But we are in the trenches, and you are not leaving this war.
No, you are not. Never surrender. Ben, wondering, any ideas on what to do with Mr. Travis Etienne in Dynasty? Has it never been more over for Travis Etienne? Or, Doug Peterson on his way out, almost assuredly in Jacksonville. Do we hold the line with Travis Etienne?
I actually wouldn't mind selling him. I don't think he's a particularly special talent. He's solid. I think he's a good running back, but he strikes me as sort of how we felt, ironically, about David Montgomery leaving Chicago. When David Montgomery left Chicago, we laughed the Lions out of the room when they signed him. And of course, his talent has been revealed by playing on a good team, but he strikes me as someone who is extremely dependent on the situation they're in that he cannot overcome a bad situation. He just doesn't have that level of explosion to his game. He's not that elite of a pass catcher. All of these things tell me he's fittingly, he's kind of a Jag. So, and now he's in a bit of a committee on a team that isn't very good, that's totally about to fire their coach. It strikes me as sort of a lost cause in terms of, can he be a year in, year out RB1? And you're just kind of hoping he can be the RB20 next year. Like, that feels like a win if he's the RB20 next year. That's not a bet I want to make.
The only thing ETN, I don't know if it's the last year of his rookie deal or not, because I don't know if they exercised his 5th-year option or not.
No way to know.
He could be getting kind of the reset that you referenced with David Montgomery. That is the thing with ETN. But the other thing with ETN is that he's now firmly typecast as a committee guy. Mm-hmm. Once one coaching staff decides you're a committee guy, other coaching staffs tend to follow. So the dynasty future is not that great for Travis Etienne. But running backs, especially first round running backs, have a way of hanging on, like longer than you would think in dynasty. So there's a little hope for him. Yeah, no longer an elite asset though.
They did pick up his 5th-year option, so he's stuck in Jacksonville for another year too.
Damn, that's no good.
Over.
It's over. Well, though they're firing Doug, so maybe it won't be over. Jerry Medina, Amari Cooper, and Deontay Johnson are both available on waivers in his league. Who would you prioritize as an ad? I think I'm leaning Amari Cooper, but I honestly don't know.
No, that was me too. I mean, Deontay Johnson wasn't targeted last week. He only got 13 snaps, and they play on a short week. And I'm pretty confident to say Zay Flowers is going to be this team's number 1 wide receiver. He's just been incredible. Over 100 yards in 4 of his past 5 games. He's been I guess maybe in terms of proportionally, Mark Andrews has been the biggest beneficiary because he was literally nothing, and now he's scoring some touchdowns. But Zay Flowers sort of been the engine of the offense, and I would say the total biggest beneficiary of the Ravens becoming this MVP-led juggernaut. And I don't think it's going to change even as Deontay gets more integrated, and they play on a short week this week. Whereas Amari Cooper, when he comes back, I still think it's a very clear path for him to be his team's number 1 wide receiver. His health makes it that's what draws it pretty close for me.
I do wish Amari Cooper were not Amari Coopering quite so hard to begin. The Amari Cooper levels have been through the roof for his unveiling as a Bill. That is unfortunate, but I prefer Amari Cooper there too, and I prefer to answer more questions, but unfortunately we're out of time. We have to call it on the Week 10 waiver wire chat. We don't have to call it on providing you with content all week. Check out the waiver wire article. It's still actionable for over 24 hours. Check out my rankings later this week. Check out my Tuesday podcast with Denny Carter. He's going to have his regression files coming out. All sorts of great stuff on the website. We'll have trade deadline breakdown and reaction on Tuesday. Certainly some players from me getting traded. So thank you so much for always taking some time to spend your Monday evening with us. We'll be back on this chat next week at 6 p.m. Eastern, and we'll be all over the site all week. For Kyle and Pat, we'll talk to you later.